Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday. What day? The 6th of May. I'm waiting at the school as I always do every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I am holding in my hand a Pro 1000 cartridge. Now, people have been asking me, like, how do you go ahead and set up your Pro 1000 for refilling with whatever ink source I want to utilize? And it's actually an involved process, but not really that difficult. So normally, and I could talk for hours about how the printer itself determines the actual usage of ink. In other words, every milliliter of ink is accounted for, believe it or not. It does not rely on guesswork like most other printers do. It actually measures the amount of ink that is being deposited in an inner little compartment for each one of the 12 channels. So he knows that the compartment utilizes or fills up with a certain number of ml of ink. And then when it reaches a sensor, as it is being utilized, it opens up a fill valve that opens up, allows ink to flow from the cartridge back into that little reservoir. It reaches the top sensor and it shuts off that ink flow. So it knows exactly how much ink is being used every single cycle, or replenishment cycle, if you will. So people want to eventually disable the chip. And the chip is right here where my little pinky is pointing at. So that chip has to be disabled. But how do you go about doing that? Well, that's the second step you do. The first step is you must modify your cartridges as soon as possible. If you decide to do this, you got to modify your cartridges as soon as possible. You see the plug right here? I drill a hole either on the left side or the right side. And it has to be on those two corners, one of those two corners. 5/32 of an inch diameter. You clean up the edges. It'll raise a little bit of, because this is kind of a gummy plastic. So when you drill through it, it may cause a little ridge around the opening. Shave that off with a razor blade or an X-Acto knife. Do not enlarge the hole doing that. Make sure that you do not damage that hole. It has to be 5/32 of an inch diameter, pretty much perfectly. So as you can see right here, there's where the plug is. You then top off your cartridge. Oh, should I do it while I still have ink? Of course, you have to do it while you still have ink in your cartridges. You cannot wait until it is empty, okay? The idea is to fool the printer into thinking it has an eternal ink reservoir. In other words, you keep topping off that cartridge. The full weight is 112 grams. If you were to weigh an empty card, declare empty by the printer, it would weigh like 32 grams. So you add 80 ml and it takes you up to 112 grams. So that is the key. So you're going to remove your cartridges. You're going to drill that hole carefully. You're going to top it off with the ink of your choice. I, of course, recommend Precision Colors ink because they utilize a few of the OEM actual colors. They actually buy large cartridges and harvest the inks for those larger printers that utilize the same ink formulation as the Pro 1000. So fill your cartridge, weigh it, and then plug it, pop it back into your printer. Do all 12 of them. So now you end up with 12 cartridges that will have reported ink levels by the chip. This is critical. Reported ink levels by the chip that differ. It might be 3/4 of the way down. It might be, let's just say, 25% left. You waited too long. You should have done it earlier. Half, maybe 75%, and so on. But you have refilled your cartridges to the tippy top. So now they are full physically, but the chip doesn't know that yet. So at each cycle of replenishing those internal reservoirs continue to, be fulfilled, if you will, ink is being utilized. Now, the printer is keeping track of how many cycles have you gone through, say, yellow. And at some point, it'll say, wait a minute, I have definitely gone beyond 80 ml. Where's all this ink coming from? That's because you have been topping off your cartridges, okay? At the point where it should have been called low, that's when you have like 20 ml left, like 25% left in the cartridge. At that point, it's going, wait a minute, I should be low, but what's going on? It'll trigger a low warning on your chip. You just continue refilling, continue using those cartridges. It knows that after the low warning, you only have 20 ml left, but you will use up 20 ml, 25 ml, 30 ml, and even more. And eventually it just says, okay, something's wrong here. Bingo, it throws an error. You will see it on your screen. It'll scare the living crap out of you, but all it is a 1753 error. And then at that point, you press the second button, the one below the power button, and you hold it for 5 seconds. You will see the words processing moving across the screen of your printer. That means that is disabling that chip. It is saying, okay, Jose, you dummy, you continue printing. We know that we warned you. You had a low warning. Somehow, something is malfunctioning because we keep getting ink into that reservoir. We're going to allow you to continue printing. Go ahead and disable the chip, you dummy. Well, the printer doesn't know that we have been refilling these cartridges, so they never run out of ink. So once all 12 of them are disabled, this is a long process. It took me 6 months. So at that point, now you have disabled chip cards that are modified for refilling, and you just got to be careful. You just got to top them off like every 3 months or so. Or buy the sensor system from Precision Colors that attaches to the front of the cartridge. And it tells by a series of lights when you need to top off. We're not going to get into that. It's a long explanation about that as well. But here's the short version. You know how I talk forever. Top off all your cartridges, modify them, top them off before they reach low. Continue printing, continue topping off. At some point, the low warning will have been triggered because you used 60 ml out of the 80. Disregard that, continue topping off, and at some point, it'll just say, okay, that's it. I'm throwing in the towel. 1753 error pops up. Hold that second button until you see the words processing flying across your printer screen. Eventually, that will stop. Now that chip is basically disabled. On the screen, you will just see a full bar of whatever color that is. On your driver, however, in your computer, you will just see a blank channel. It will not show anything. All my 12 are already disabled, so nothing shows up on my computer screen. But on my printer screen, it shows up as 12 full tanks of ink. Yeah, it's a little confusing. But nevertheless, at that point, you don't have to ever worry about chips. Just keep refilling your cartridges. Make it a point to, if you don't choose to buy the sensor system, make it a point to always top off, say, every 3 months, depending on how much you print. Okay? And on a Pro-1000, folks, make sure you print something every day. That is critical. Every day. If you own QImage, set that scheduling system to print that set of little lines every single day, say at midnight, because that way you'll use up a tiny amount of ink and you will never have to worry about a cleaning cycle, wasting a ton of ink. More ink than you would actually use to create a print. It makes no sense. I don't want to idle my car for 3 hours before I make a trip across the street to get some, coffee or something. You see what I mean? So make sure that you print daily. And if you don't, you will always get a little pre-print cleaning cycle. And that'll waste more ink than you would have used printing that little set of lines every single day. That's what I do. I got my Pro 1000. I got my Pro 1 set up to print those little bars. That Q image is called the unclog tool. And it is a scheduling tool. You set it to whatever schedule. For the Pro 1000 series, 1100, if you happen to have one of those, the Pro 100, the Pro 10, the Pro 200, 300, any Canon printer, set it for every day just to print one of those little tiny, and do half a page. That's all you need to do. That way, when you do then print a real photograph, it'll print immediately without having to do all of this pre-flight checking and whatever. All right, that is it for now. I hope you enjoyed this. I will continue to do this afternoons while I wait for Nathan. He's coming out in 3 minutes. So hope you enjoy this. And if you have any questions, put them on the comment section below. I will always answer those for you. And there'll be more. All right, so keep your eyes open around this time of the afternoon. I will post this a little bit later once I get to his house. So thank you once again. Happy printing, everybody. Bye-bye.